The envelope was white, institutional white, the kind that comes from banks, not friends. Daniel held it against the kitchen light, and even before opening it, he knew. The paper inside was thin, legal thin. The number at the bottom was printed in a font designed to look friendly. 147,612 rays. Due in full. Immediate collection authorized. His hands did not shake. They had stopped shaking years ago. He set the envelope on the table, next to the others. 11 envelopes, 11 months, all saying the same thing in different words. Your grandfather signed. Your family owes. Pay or lose everything. Outside, the rain started. It was March 2019. Daniel was 33 years old. He had never met his grandfather. Joaquim had died in 1984, 2 years before Daniel was born. But every day of Daniel's life had been shaped by a single piece of paper Joaquim had signed 49 years earlier. One signature. 3 generations destroyed. Daniel did not cry anymore. There was nothing left to cry about. Joaquim Alves Pereira was 52 years old in 1970. He lived in a small town in the interior of Minas Gerais, where the roads were still dirt, and the bank was a single room with 2 desks and a ceiling fan that never worked. He was a man of routine. Every morning at 5:15, he woke before the rooster. He made coffee in an aluminum pot, the same pot his mother had given him when he married. He drank it black, standing by the window, watching the sky turn from black to gray to gold. He worked at the ceramics factory on the edge of town. He had worked there for 27 years. His hands were calloused, stained permanently with red clay that no soap could remove. He made 180 cruzeiros a month. It was enough. His wife, Maria, managed the money with the precision of an accountant. They had 3 children. The eldest, Carlos, was 16 and already working part-time at the hardware store. The younger 2 were still in school. Joaquim was a man people trusted. When he said he would do something, he did it. When he borrowed sugar, he returned it the next day with a little extra. When his neighbor's roof collapsed during a storm, Joaquim spent his Sunday helping rebuild it, asking for nothing in return. In a town of 800 people, trust was currency. Joaquim was rich in it. He did not talk much, but when he did, people listened. He had a way of looking at you that made you feel seen, not judged, just seen. His youngest daughter, Anna, would later remember that her father never raised his voice. Not once. Even when he was angry, he spoke quietly, and somehow that made you listen more carefully. On Sundays, the family went to church. Afterward, they walked to the small market square where vendors sold fresh bread and fruit. Joaquim always bought Maria a single orange. It was their ritual. She would peel it slowly, sharing pieces with the children, and Joaquim would smile, saying nothing, watching his family in the shade of the jacaranda tree. He was a simple man. He wanted simple things. A roof that did not leak, food on the table, his children educated, a quiet life. He believed that if you worked hard and treated people fairly, life would treat you fairly in return. He was wrong. It started with a visit. Roberto, Maria's younger brother, came to the house on a Tuesday evening in June 1970. He was nervous. His shirt was clean but wrinkled, and he kept running his hand through his hair, a habit he had when he was anxious. Roberto was 28, a dreamer, always chasing the next opportunity. He had tried selling insurance, then farming, then driving a taxi. Nothing stuck. But this time, he said, was different. He had found a business opportunity. A friend in Belo Horizonte was opening a small textile workshop. They needed investors. Not much. Just enough to buy 2 industrial sewing machines and rent a space. Roberto had saved some money, but he needed a loan from the bank to cover the rest. 3,000 cruzeiros. He would pay it back in 2 years, maybe less. There was just one problem. The bank required a guarantor, someone with steady employment, someone the bank trusted. Roberto looked at Joaquim across the table. "Please," he said. "I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. This is my chance. I'll pay it back. I promise. You won't have to do anything. Just sign." Maria was quiet. She looked at Joaquim, then at her brother, then down at her hands. Joaquim thought about it. Roberto was family. Family helped each other. That was the rule. That was how you survived. Besides, Roberto would pay it back. He always did, eventually. And if something went wrong, Well, 3,000 cruzeros was not a fortune. Joaquim made that in a year and a half. Manageable. He said yes. They went to the bank the following Saturday. The manager, Senor Tavares, was a man in his 60s with wire-rimmed glasses and a pen that never left his hand. He explained the terms. The loan was for 3,000 cruzeros. Interest rate of 18% annually. Repayment over 24 months. And Joaquim, as guarantor, would be equally responsible for the debt if Roberto defaulted. Did Joaquim understand? Joaquim nodded. He understood. Roberto would not default. He was family. Senor Tavares placed a document in front of Joaquim. It was 2 pages, typed on thin paper, filled with language Joaquim did not fully understand. Words like solidary liability and joint debtor and accrued interest compounded monthly. He did not ask what they meant. He assumed it was standard, legal language, the kind banks use to protect themselves. He signed on the line at the bottom. His signature was careful. Each letter formed slowly, the way a man writes who did not learn to write until he was 14. Joaquim Alves Pereira, guarantor. Senor Tavares smiled. He shook Roberto's hand, then Joaquim's. "Congratulations," he said. "Your brother-in-law is a lucky man to have family like you." Joaquim left the bank feeling good. He had helped someone. That was what mattered. On the way home, he stopped at the market and bought Maria an orange, an extra one, because it was Saturday, and the sun was bright, and life felt simple again. He never read the second page of the contract. The page that explained that, as a solidary guarantor, Joaquim was not just a backup. He was a co-debtor. If Roberto missed even a single payment, the bank could come after Joaquim immediately, without trying to collect from Roberto first. The page that explained the interest would compound monthly, not annually, meaning the debt would grow faster than Joaquim imagined. The page that explained this debt could be inherited by his descendants if he died before it was paid. These details were written in 8-point font at the bottom of the second page, in a paragraph marked Legal Obligations and Heir Responsibilities. Joaquim never saw them. Senor Tavares had not mentioned them. In 1970, in small towns across Brazil, these clauses were standard. Banks did not explain them. Borrowers did not ask. The system worked because people trusted it, and people like Joaquim paid for that trust. For the first 6 months, everything seemed fine. Roberto made his payments on time. He would visit Joaquim and Maria every few weeks, always cheerful, always talking about how well the business was going. Orders were coming in. The machines were running. He even hired 2 employees. Joaquim felt proud. He had made the right decision. Then in January 1971, Roberto missed a payment. He called Joaquim, apologetic. A client had delayed payment. It would be resolved next month. Just a small delay. Nothing to worry about. Joaquim believed him. These things happened in business. February came. No payment. March. April. By June, Roberto stopped calling. When Joaquim tried to visit him in Belo Horizonte, the textile workshop was closed. The landlord said Roberto had left 3 months earlier, owing rent. No forwarding address, no explanation, just gone. In August 1971, Joaquim received his first letter from the bank. It was polite. It informed him that the loan was now in default. The total amount owed, including accumulated interest and late fees, was 4,200 cruzeros. Payment was requested within 30 days. Joaquim felt his stomach drop. 4,200? The loan had been 3,000. How had it grown so fast? He went to the bank. Senor Tavares was no longer there. A younger man, Senor Brandão, sat at the desk. He explained calmly. Interest compounds monthly. Late fees apply after 15 days. Collection costs are added after 60 days. This was all in the contract. Did Senor Joaquim not read the contract? Joaquim tried to explain. He was just the guarantor. Roberto was responsible. Shouldn't the bank go after Roberto first? Senor Brandão shook his head. As a solidary guarantor, Joaquim was equally responsible. The bank could choose to collect from either party. Roberto could not be located. Joaquim could. Therefore, Joaquim would pay. Joaquim did not have 4,000 cruzeros. He had 300 in savings. He offered to pay in installments. The bank agreed, but the interest continued to grow. Every month, Joaquim paid what he could. 50 cruzeros, 80 cruzeros, whatever was left after rent and food. But the debt grew faster than he could pay it. By 1973, it was 6,000. By 1975, 8,000. Maria stopped buying meat. The children wore the same clothes until they tore. Joaquim took a second job cleaning the church on weekends. He stopped buying oranges. Carlos, his eldest son, dropped out of school at 17 to work full-time. He never said it was because of the debt, but everyone knew. The family needed money. Carlos worked at the hardware store during the day and unloaded trucks at the market at night. He was young and strong, and he told himself it was temporary, just until his father caught up. But his father never caught up. In 1981, Joaquim had a heart attack. He was 63. He survived, but the doctors said he could not work anymore. Not heavy labor. His heart was too weak. The ceramics factory gave him a small pension. It was not enough to live on, much less pay the debt. By then, the debt was 14,000 cruzeros. Adjusted for inflation and currency changes, it had become a living thing, something that fed on time and grew in the dark. Joaquim died in 1984. He was 66 years old. His last words to Carlos were an apology. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." Carlos held his father's hand and said it was okay, but it was not okay. 2 weeks after the funeral, Carlos received a letter from the bank. It informed him that as the eldest son and heir, he was now responsible for his father's debts. The amount owed was 21,000 cruzeros. Payment plans were available. Please contact the bank within 15 days. Carlos was 29 years old. He was married. His wife, Luciana, was pregnant with their first child. They lived in a small apartment in Belo Horizonte, where Carlos had moved for work. He managed a warehouse. He made a decent salary. They were saving to buy a house. Now, he owed 21,000 cruzeros for a debt he had never agreed to, for a loan his father had never received, for a business that had failed before Carlos even finished school. He tried to fight it. He hired a lawyer, a young man fresh out of law school who worked for cheap. The lawyer explained that under Brazilian inheritance law, debts are passed to heirs automatically unless the estate is formally rejected. But if Carlos rejected the estate, he would also reject any assets. His father had no assets, just the debt. The lawyer said Carlos could try to argue that the debt was unfair, that the interest was predatory, that the bank had acted in bad faith. But these cases took years, and the interest kept growing. Carlos could not afford years. He had a baby coming. He needed stability, so he did what his father had done. He paid, slowly, painfully. Every month he sent money to the bank, 200 cruzeros, 300, whatever he could spare. But the debt grew faster. By 1990, it was 42,000 cruzeros. The currency changed. Cruzeros became cruzados, then cruzados novos. Then, in 1994, reais. The debt changed with it, adjusted for inflation, converted at rates that always favored the bank. Carlos never bought the house. He and Luciana rented for 27 years. Their son, Daniel, grew up in apartments that smelled of other people's cooking, in buildings where the walls were so thin you could hear the neighbors arguing. Daniel did not know why they never had money. His father did not talk about it. Carlos was a quiet man, like his father had been. He worked. He paid bills. He did not complain. But Daniel noticed things. He noticed that his father never took vacations, never bought new clothes, never went to restaurants. He noticed that when other kids got bicycles for their birthdays, Daniel got books from the church donation bin. He noticed the way his mother counted coins before going to the market, the way she divided the rice into portions that stretched across the week. When Daniel was 12, he asked his father why they were poor. Carlos looked at him for a long time. Then he said, "We're not poor. We just owe someone." "Who?" Daniel asked. "A bank," Carlos said. "For what?" "For something that happened before you were born." Daniel did not understand, but he would. In 2003, Carlos had a stroke. He was 56. He did not die, but half his body stopped working. He could not manage the warehouse anymore. He retired on disability. The pension was small. The debt was 78,000 reais. Luciana took over the payments. She worked as a seamstress, sewing clothes at home for a factory in the industrial district. She sewed from 6 in the morning until 11 at night, hunched over a machine older than Daniel. Her hands developed arthritis. She never complained. Daniel was 17. He wanted to go to university. He had good grades. He could have studied engineering, maybe become something. But there was no money. He got a job instead, at a call center. 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, reading scripts to people who did not want to talk to him. At night, he studied online, free courses, trying to teach himself what university would have taught him. The debt kept growing. In 2011, Luciana died. Cancer. By the time they found it, it was everywhere. She died in a public hospital, in a ward with 12 beds and 1 nurse. Carlos held her hand. Daniel stood at the foot of the bed, watching his mother disappear. She was 58. The debt was 103,000 reais. Carlos could not work, could barely walk. Daniel was 25. He moved his father into his apartment, a 1-bedroom in a neighborhood where the buses stopped running at 10. Daniel slept on the couch. His father slept in the bedroom. The door always open so Daniel could hear if he fell. Daniel worked 2 jobs. The call center during the day, a security company at night, watching cameras in an empty office building. He came home at 6 in the morning, slept for 3 hours, then went back to the call center. He did this for 4 years. He sent money to the bank every month, 500 reais, 600, whatever was left. The debt grew. Carlos died in 2015, quietly, in his sleep. Daniel found him in the morning. He was 71. He looked older. Daniel called the funeral company. He paid for the cheapest service. A simple coffin, no flowers. 12 people came to the funeral, mostly neighbors. People who did not know Carlos had spent his entire adult life paying for a signature his father had made. 3 weeks later, Daniel received the letter. The debt was now 119,000 reais. As the sole heir, Daniel was responsible. Payment was required. Daniel was 29 years old. He had no wife, no children, no savings, no life outside of work and debt. He looked at the letter for a long time. Then he made a decision. He would end this. He sold everything. The furniture, the television, his father's clothes, his mother's sewing machine. He moved into a room in a shared house with 5 other people. 1 bathroom, no kitchen. He ate rice and beans, the same meal every day because it was cheap. He stopped going out, stopped seeing friends, stopped answering his phone unless it was work. He took a 3rd job. Weekends, he drove for a rideshare app. Friday night to Sunday night, 18 hours straight, sleeping in the car between rides. Monday morning, back to the call center. His body hurt all the time. His back, his eyes, his chest. He ignored it. He had a goal, 119,000 reais, plus interest. He calculated that if he paid 3,000 a month, every month without missing once, he could do it in 4 years, maybe 5. He paid 4,000, then 5. He stopped eating out entirely. He canceled his internet. He wore the same 3 shirts until they frayed. When his shoes broke, he glued them back together. When he got sick, he did not go to the doctor. He could not afford to miss work. The bank sent statements every month. The balance decreased, slowly. 115,000, 108, 97, 83. Daniel did not celebrate. He just kept working. In 2018, he collapsed at work. Exhaustion, the doctor said. His body was shutting down. He needed rest. Daniel took 3 days off. Then he went back. He could not afford rest. The debt was 62,000 reais. People at the call center started to avoid him. He had become hollow. He did not make jokes anymore, did not join conversations. He came in, worked his shift, and left. His supervisor asked if he was okay. Daniel said he was fine. He was not fine. But fine was not something he could afford to worry about. By 2019, the debt was 31,000 reais. Daniel could see the end. It was real now. Close. He worked harder. He stopped sleeping more than 4 hours a night. His hair started to gray. He was 33 years old and he looked 50. In November 2019, Daniel made the final payment, 31,478 reais. He wired it from his phone while sitting in his car, parked outside a supermarket where he had just finished a 12-hour shift. He pressed confirm. The screen said, "Transaction complete." Daniel sat in the car. The engine was off. It was cold. He could see his breath. He waited for something. Relief, joy, anything. But there was nothing. Just silence. Just the feeling of being empty. He thought about his grandfather. A man he had never met. A man who had signed a paper in 1970 because he believed family helped family. A man who had worked himself to death trying to fix a mistake he did not understand. Daniel thought about his father. Quiet, broken, spending 27 years paying for someone else's failure. His mother, sewing until her hands gave out. All of them. 3 generations, 59 years. For one signature. The debt was gone. But so was everything else. Daniel was 33. He had no education, no career, no relationships, no savings. He had spent his entire adult life working to erase something that should never have been his burden. He was free, but freedom felt like nothing. It felt like a room where all the furniture had been removed, and you could finally see how empty it had always been. He drove home. He walked into his small room. He sat on the edge of the bed, and for the first time in years, he cried. Not because it was over, but because of what it had cost. He had won. He had broken the cycle. He had done what his grandfather and father could not, but he had lost himself in the process. The years he would never get back. The life he would never live. The person he might have been. Redemption, he realized, is not the same as restoration. You can be free and still be destroyed. The system that created Joaquim's debt no longer exists, at least not in the same form. Solidary guarantees still exist in Brazil, but the laws around inherited debt have been reformed. Courts now recognize the concept of predatory lending. Interest rate caps exist. Consumer protection agencies intervene. But these changes came slowly, over decades, long after families like Daniel's had already been consumed. The bank that issued the original loan in 1970 no longer exists. It was absorbed by a larger bank in 1998, which was then absorbed by an even larger bank in 2006. The debt was sold, transferred, repackaged, and sold again. By the time Daniel made his final payment, the money did not go to anyone who remembered Joaquim. It went into a system, a machine that turns signatures into numbers and numbers into suffering. Joaquim signed one paper because he trusted his brother-in-law, because family helped family, because that was what decent people did. He could not have known that his signature would outlive him, that it would become a ghost that haunted his son, then his grandson, that a single moment of trust would compound over time, growing in the dark, feeding on the lives of people who had not yet been born. Daniel is 38 now. He works at the same call center. He lives in a slightly better apartment. 1 bedroom, his own bathroom. He can afford meat once a week. He does not drive for rideshare anymore. His body will not allow it. He has friends, though not many. He does not talk about his family. When people ask why he never married, he says he was busy. They assume he means with work. He does not correct them. Sometimes, late at night, he thinks about what he might have been. An engineer, maybe. A teacher. A father. Someone with a life that was his own. But these thoughts do not last long. There is no point in imagining what cannot be changed. The debt is gone. That is enough. It has to be. He broke the cycle. His children, if he ever has any, will not inherit this burden. That is the redemption. Small, bitter, earned through the sacrifice of everything he might have been. It is not the redemption anyone would choose, but it is the only one the system offered, and he took it. Daniel's story is not unique. Between 1960 and 2000, millions of Brazilians signed as guarantors for family members, friends, and neighbors. Most did not understand the legal implications. Most could not afford lawyers when things went wrong. The debts grew, compounded, were inherited. The system allowed it, encouraged it even, because someone always paid, not the borrower, not the bank, but someone like Joaquim, someone like Carlos, someone like Daniel. In the archives of Brazilian courts, there are thousands of cases like this. Families destroyed over loans they never received. Children paying for their grandparents' trust. The documentation is public. The pattern is clear. A signature, a default, a spiral, a lifetime, sometimes 3. But there was one case, one family in Rio de Janeiro. A woman named Teresa who received the same letter Daniel received, the same demand, the same threat. But Teresa did not pay. She fought. She found a lawyer who worked for free. She filed suit against the bank. She argued that the debt was illegal, that the interest had been miscalculated, that the inheritance laws had been applied incorrectly. The case took 11 years. The bank fought every step. But Teresa won, not just for herself, for everyone. Her case set a legal precedent that changed how inherited debts could be collected in Brazil. Thousands of families used her victory to challenge their own debts. Some won, some lost. But they had a chance, because one woman refused. That story, though, is for another time.